My name's Pavan. I'm back in Davos with Imagination in Action and John and the crew. This time I'm with a company called Extuitive, which is backed by Flagship Pioneering. We're focused on the $1 trillion ad economy and helping e-commerce businesses predict and forecast which ads are going to perform well for them before they burn a lot of budget. I have with me here Shikhar Ghosh. He's a professor at the Harvard Business School. And we're going to have a conversation about AI, what he's seeing in this space, what I'm seeing, and just have a deeper conversation on some of these topics. So, Shikhar, why don't we start with what you're working on right now at the Harvard Business School?
So I'm doing two things. One is I'm looking at, um, what happens next. So I'm looking at three technologies as a course that I teach on how do these technologies change not only the world of AI, but also when you combine them with the blockchain, when you combine them with biology, how does it change society? And then the second big question that I'm trying to answer for our students mostly is what do they need to know? So when they go into the workforce, how different is their world going to be than the world that I stepped into? So those are the two big sort of questions that I'm doing.
Perfect. So why don't we dig into it? So Shikhar, why don't we use examples? You start and then I'll follow in terms of what I'm seeing. So let's use maybe a one specific example that you think would resonate with the audience in terms of what you're teaching these students and perhaps an anecdote that could be of value.
So one of the things that um, the course is structured along many different facets of AI or the blockchain. And what you start to see very quickly is that AI enhances the intelligence, the cognitive capacity of people. And people sort of get that. What they don't get is AI also can be used to exploit the weaknesses. So, you think about us, we get easily distracted. We get easily hit by dopamine, control,
Yes, of course.
right? And and so once the AI understands that, which it does right now, um, it can change behavior. It
Yeah.
can control behavior. It can change persuasion. It can do a variety of things. And so one of the classes, for example, we have students use Replica for a couple of weeks, and in just 2 weeks, you can start to see some fraction of the students change their behavior. They get attached to these replica models and so on. And and it's very hard to predict who's going to get affected and who's not. And so, in a lot of what we're trying to do is show them as opposed to tell them what's actually going to happen in this process. And I think part of what makes all this exciting is we don't have any answers. We just had Jan LeCun talk about his view, but you can have equally qualified people who have the exact opposite view that he does, both about the models and about the effect on society and when we're going to get some kind of super intelligence. All the questions that he answered, and he's about as well qualified as anyone is.
Of course.
And you could get Jeff Hinton, you could get whoever else,
Yes.
to come in, and they would say diametrically opposed things. So we're at the stage where the realm of possibilities goes from one extreme to the other.
Of course. Thanks, Shikhar. Yeah, so that's a great point, and I love that example. I think from my perspective, having been at Flagship now and Extuitive specifically, Flagship's been in the business of AI for quite some time. So the original, many people don't know this, but the original company that Flagship founded, even though everyone talks about Moderna and mRNA being invented by Nubar and Flagship in 2007, about full 12 years before COVID, which is just still blows my mind. Back in the year 2000, there was a company called Afanova that was created, and it was the original AI ML model for granular consumer data, which was then used by some of the largest consumer goods brands in the world to help them with packaging and pricing decisions. And 25 years on, fast forward, what I'm working on right now is this been supercharged. That same concept has been supercharged by artificial intelligence, where we have gone out and built a model based on real human behavior. We built a proprietary consumer data model based on responses from hundreds of thousands of U.S. consumers about a variety of things, hundreds of markers, but the most important one being their propensity to buy based on most likely to least likely. We then use that, agenticize that information. So there's a digital avatar of you, your students, me, and we then pressure test creatives, ads, and help e-commerce businesses understand what specifically is going to work. So one brand in particular, they make tens of millions of dollars a year. They waste a lot of money on this budget. They give us some of their creatives. We score it for them, and at an 80%-ish success rate, we can tell them which ones will work, which ones won't.
And you could use that for politics. You could use that for
Right. I didn't want to go there, but we're starting with creatives because it's a big $1 trillion market, but certainly that could be extended to a variety of different markets over time. So those are some specific examples I'm seeing, and the reason I'm bringing these up is, most people think about AI impacting obviously consulting, customer support, some very obvious use cases, but in my view, it's impacting every imaginable vertical from e-commerce to auto dealers to manufacturing, even though manufacturing is still a little bit slower. And it's also impacting, obviously, education. So I think these examples, sort of what they show me is that there's no part of society that is going to be untouched by what artificial intelligence can do. And to your point, it's still the early innings. It feels like we've been in this for a while, but I spoke to Jan last year. Dario had some really crazy predictions last year, saying that in 5 years there's going to be so many jobs lost, and Jan was completely on the opposite end. But I think he's coming around too. Like, I think there's this leveling off on these opinions, and over time it'll become a little bit more mature. So, Shikhar, any final thoughts before we end this?
Yeah, I think, what most of the people who are looking at this, including me, what we do is we look at different aspects. Will customer service, will software programming, will each of these things get changed? What's also happening at the same time is the structure of society will also change. So, we had Sam Altman in class. And one of the things he said that really struck me was he said, today when you take any group of people, and he looked at the class and said, if I take this whole group, the difference between the smartest on any topic and the median is going to be 1 or 2 standard deviations. And he said, we are now building technologies, not just AI, but a bunch of others, that can make that difference 1 million standard deviations. And now the question is, do you still have the same species in that process? And so the reason why I look at biology and I look at the blockchain and so on is that the notion of cooperation, the notion of, what are the limits of our intelligence? What happens if we enhance ourselves? Those kinds of questions, which are all certainly within the lifetime of my students. Those questions change society. We often think about new productivity, but what we don't fully consider is that productivity is not evenly distributed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so all kinds of questions come up.
Thank you. Well, look, Shikhar, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here with John and team with Imagination in Action in Davos. As Shikhar just said, you heard it here first. We might have humanoids replacing us next year for this interview. So we're about to find out. But it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much, Shikhar. Appreciate it.